Welcome back to Parenting Shrink Wrap. Melissa and Sam here today to talk about teenage parties. And obviously, we've got New Year's right around the corner in only a couple of days now. And we thought this was a really relevant topic. And we all remember those parties we went to when we were younger, but it definitely feels different when you're the parent of a kid wanting to go to the party. And Sam, I can only imagine how many coaching calls you must get about this exact topic.
Many. Like and a lot of it is, how do I rein my kid in, or how do I say, like, do I say yes to this when I don't feel totally comfortable? How do I get comfortable? Yes. So we can talk about all of that. I get a lot of this, a lot.
And what about those calls? What do you bring from your own experience of, like, not only obviously having been an adolescent that probably went to a party at some point along the way, but also having been a parent now and watching your kids who are now college age probably go through this exact process?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was a school counselor for like hundreds of kids too. So in addition to, like, you want to talk about complicated hats to wear in the school, the school I worked, I was the don't do drugs lady. I was the one bringing in the speakers on substance prevention education. And then I had kids in my own household who were friends with the kids I was putting these programs on for, trying to figure out how to navigate their social life, and substance use was coming into the play, right? So yes, this is like, talk about worlds colliding. And as you began by talking about our own like partying history, and I'll say that I was not a hard parent. I mean, a hard kid to parent in that regard until late in my high school career. So I was, and one of the things we say about well, at least substance use, is delay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, help your kids delay use, right? And so I delayed on my own. I didn't start doing that earlier. I was kind of I don't know, like, I was a great student, and you were too, right? Like,
Yeah,
you were.
no, I'm sitting here, if you're listening, kind of like nodding my head to Sam, because it was the same thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't really something that I went to tons of high school parties or anything. I didn't.
Yeah, I was an athlete. I played sports.
Yep.
I just, like, my friends were similar. But my senior year of high school, things changed. Like, I had more fun, and my parents had more gray hairs at the end of that. So that was like, so I delayed until my senior year of high school, and then there was, things to navigate. Before we started recording, I told this story to Melissa, but a kid moved onto my street when we were in middle school, and he ran in a different crowd than I did. We were not enemies, but we weren't friends. It was a big public district, and he was friends with like the football players and the ice hockey players, and I was friends with like the mathletes and the field hockey girls. And anyway, I remember I remember driving home from being out with my friends, doing something, I don't know, but it was substance free at the time. I was a junior, so I had my license, and I drove home, and he was having a party at his house that was not substance free. And there were kids that I knew. They were all kids I knew of. Maybe I hadn't spoken to, like, spilling out of his house, like stumbling around on his front lawn.
Oh no.
And it was a dead end street. So I had to go past his house to get to my house, because I lived at the end of the dead end. But like, people were in the street causing ruckus, and I was like, excuse me, let me drive my parents' Ford Mercury station wagon through your game of beer pong. Excuse me, right? Like, beep, beep.
These are people I'm going to see on Monday morning at school.
I know. And but like, there you go. That's high school in a nutshell, right? Like, so I was a perfectly well-adjusted kid, and actually these kids probably were too. They were taking way more risks than I was at the time. And I remember feeling kind of awkward about that. And like, am I don't know, babyish, for lack of a better word. For
feeling
being
uncool, right?
uncool,
Like,
yeah, not the straight arrow, right? Is that a problem for me? And like, I distinctly remember that moment of awkwardness. And that's the stuff that peer pressure is made of right
Oh
there,
yeah.
right? Like, again, this wasn't my friend group, but imagine if I had to drive through a party like that where I knew people, then like that's
What if it
significant.
is your close field hockey friends?
Right, right. Well, that's kind of what happened later on. Some of my close friends, a few of them started experimenting, and that normalized it, right? And then, so then my friend, then it just sort of entered into my friend group in a way that it hadn't before. So, so yes, partying is a topic that comes up a lot, and I'm sure too for you in your office occasionally. Yes, yeah,
Oh, definitely.
right. So, so there's this tension, right, between kids wanting to be kids and wanting to socialize and get together, and that's fun and important, actually.
Yeah.
Not not necessarily substance wise, but it's important for them to gather and be with each other. And then parents wanting to make sure the kids stay safe and regulate and have an idea of like whatever's going on. Like that's the pull.
And I think it raises parental anxiety a lot because a lot of parents will think back to maybe things and choices they made at 16, 17, 18 years old and go, oh, goodness gracious, if my kid is going to do this. And if it's happening even at younger ages now than when a parent maybe did or experimented with those things, that produces a ton of parental anxiety.
Growth. Yeah.
So, and then you have an adolescent who's probably most adolescents just trying to socialize and normal experimentation potentially or attending a party. Whereas on the parent side, your anxiety is through the roof because you remember the worst, stupidest thing you did in that age bracket.
Speaking of that, this is a total sidebar, but here's a little parenting tip if you're listening. If your kid says, did you party in high school or did you do whatever risky behavior, you name it? Sometimes we're like, I should answer truthfully, right? There's so much it depends in that question. So here's my advice for parents. When your kid asks you a question, you're like, I'm just damned by being asked the question. Like whatever answer I give, I'm damned, right? Say back to them, what makes you ask me that right here, right now? Then you get a sense of what's going on in their head and like what they're thinking about. And you can tailor your response to whatever the actual needs are, right? So that's my advice if your kids ask you that. That's not to say you should lie to them.
No, but you don't necessarily have to give up every dirty secret in that moment either.
Right. Because if you have a kid who's going to use it against you, if you're like, yeah, I was wild in high school. And they're like, you were wild, mom, and you're my mom. You turned out okay, right? Just
so that's their pass.
Yeah. Right. So you might not want to acknowledge that you were wild in high school until they're out of high school. That you can peel back the layers.
Tone it down. You can be truthful without divulging the full truth.
Exactly. So anyway, what makes you ask that right here, right now? Just then you'll get the scoop. So yeah, there's stress, right? There's stress around substances. There's stress around friend group. There's stress around transportation, driving. And if your kid's younger than being able to drive, then there's stress around who's driving and at what hour, right?
I remember. So one thing my parents had always said to my brother and I was, always call us. We'll come get you no matter what. That didn't mean you weren't necessarily going to get in trouble the following day, but don't get in the car with someone who's intoxicated. Don't get behind the wheel. If you're intoxicated, we'll come get you. Safety first.
Yes. So that brings me to, like, I've said this on other podcast episodes, but this is something that I like when you're setting rules for your kid. So think of it like a triangle, and at the top of the triangle is safety, and at the 2 points at the bottom are skills and values.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when you're setting rules for your kids, those need to be the guideposts for those rules. And yeah, safety. So, and when you're setting rules, don't be vague with your high school kids.
Oh no.
Make good choices. Right.
Like, that goes in one ear and out the next.
But also, like, you can have a kid who's like, well,
it's better if I drink a beer than if I do this.
Exactly. They're like, I made a good choice, relatively speaking. You're like, but relative to choices in general, all those choices stunk, right? Like, they're like, I had these four choices and I made the best of the four, but it still involved something that was not in keeping
Yeah.
with values. Or
Mom, I drank only one beer. I didn't do the keg stand. Like,
what do you want, a medal? Right, exactly. Good job. No keg stands. Okay, right? Like, no. So be really clear with what your expectations are around your kids attending parties. And there's expectations around their behavior, but also around which parties you're going to say yay or nay to.
yeah.
Like in my house, I needed to know where they were going to be, whether parents were going to be there. I think I said this in the episode on substance use too. Whether parents were if there was going to be substances there, and I could talk about like how to discuss that in a way that keeps your values and doesn't make you naive, right? But if there were going to be substances there, I would say no if parents were supplying. Like I was not cool with a household that was okay at.
Because if it went against your family values.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not there yet with my kids. I've got a few years, but it's creeping up on me. But I agree with you. Like in my mind and my value system, there's a line that's crossed when the parents are, in my opinion, condoning the behavior.
And there's different levels of condoning too. There's like, yeah, we like so and so has a party at their house every weekend, and their parents know this is happening in their basement. Okay, well, I guess like at some point I began with discomfort around that, but then I was like, okay, they're not they're turning a blind eye in some ways, but they are not making it. They're not supplying. Like kids were sneaking in the stuff that like it's a really tricky thing. And also, if you asked me before my kids hit high school what my stance on was this, like my stance is still the same. I'm not in favor. I'm not okay with this. No. I don't think it's a great thing. And you have to parent the kid you have. And I was parenting a kid who ran in a faster crowd than I did in high school, for sure. So like, and so the other piece in that triangle between safety at the top and skills and values at the two bases of the triangle, next to it and equally important is your relationship with your child. And
knowing your child.
Yes, and knowing your child.
Because, if you have a kid that is in that party crowd in high school and you weren't, you might not really know, or it might raise more fear because of the unknown.
Yeah.
Like, but it doesn't change the fact that you need to know your kid. Like, is your kid more of a risk taker? Right. So, like, if you have a kid who is going to say yes to every dare at a party, and never turn down a drink or another substance, like, that might be different than the kid who, kind of delays till senior year and isn't really running those crowds.
Yeah. And then there's also two kinds of kids who say yes to every dare, right? There's the thrill seeker and there's the follower.
Yeah.
They both say yes. The thrill seeker says yes because it's an entirely internal drive.
And they get a dopamine rush. They get like...
Yeah. So you've got like your ADD kids, or the just sort of like kids who just kind of need higher levels of stimulation, who may be that kind of kid. Then you've got the kids who are socially not confident, but who want to run in the fast crowd and they want to feel a sense of belonging. So they will sacrifice their own values for the sake of belonging. And they're likely to say yes too. And how you speak to those kids is different.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So when you're talking about, like, when we're talking about sending your kids off to parties, like, just get clear. And if you have a co-parent or a co-caregiver, this should be a conversation you have with each other behind the scenes well in advance of your kids going to a party, saying, like, where do we stand on this? If one of us gets blindsided by can I go to this place this weekend, and the other one's not here, we need to know what what the party line is, right? So that's a conversation that needs to happen. And you also kind of, and there's the, like, this is not okay under any circumstances. Like, we're not allowing you to go to parties where there's substances. We understand that this is happening, you can go, but you're not to use, then there's like, well, you can go and we expect you to operate within these parameters. And by the way, kids don't really do that. Like even great kids who say they do, like their decision making goes out the window when they're under the influence, plus their IQ drops 50 points when they're with their friends.
They're also just being adolescents and their frontal lobes aren't fully developed.
Right, that's what I mean. Like and one of the things that happens when they're with their friends is their risk tolerance increases. They are much more likely to poorly assess the negative consequences of a choice when they've got an audience.
But I
Because
also think there's some relevance to letting a kid within your value system, letting your kid some autonomy, because my concern always is the kid that's never done anything who goes off to college and now all reins are off.
when you say never done anything, you mean freedom to go to a party, not necessarily.
Yes, like freedom to go to a party. Like they've not experienced it, and now they're away at college. They're off on their own. There's nothing to stop them at this point. And some of those kids sometimes then go total 180.
Sure.
And that, I think, can be scary too, because then the parent it's really out of their hands entirely.
Yeah. And well, that presumes also that kids are getting invited too. Like these things are happening, and that not all friend groups and not all friend groups have parties, and not all kids have a friend group. So
True.
like there are some kids who this issue will not come up and they wish it would, because they want more socially than they're getting in high school. So like that's just sidebar on that. So if you have a kid for whom that's the case and they just don't have exposure to this, then these are conversations that you would need to have pretty explicitly before launching your kid to college or the next step, right? If they haven't had the opportunity. But if they have had the opportunity in high school, yeah, it's worth figuring out where your line of yes is. Like what, because
and it doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything or every party though either. Like if the house that has these like ragers where there's no parents present, you're like, no, you're not going to that, but there's a couple people hanging out in so and so's basement, like, and the kids are sneaking some alcohol in and trying some stuff. That might be where your line is.
Whatever the line is, wherever, whatever. Like again, my line was honesty, and if I discover later there's been dishonesty, the reins get tightened for next time.
Oh, for sure.
So what ended up happening is I didn't flip out. So like when my kids would be honest with me and they would tell me things that my mom did not want to hear, I kept it in confidence. And if there was something that I was like, ooh, that's something that I shouldn't keep in confidence, what I did was I gave them the chance to break confidence themselves.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not something I'm not comfortable knowing that without somebody else knowing that. Like, tell your friend to tell their parent or whatever it is, So I would urge them to break the confidence. But
and I also think though too, it's important if you know your child's friend group.
Yeah, well, that was where I was going too, is that part of being able to navigate this successfully is establishing a good line of communication and strong communication patterns with your child well before they hit these sticky situations. And that happens in elementary school.
Yeah.
Right? It happens early. And so like, because what we don't want is kids to get to teenage years. And yes, they do. Their sense of self stops being solely driven by you as parents, because that's what happens when they're younger. We are their reflections. They look to us as mirrors, and they see in us what they then determine about themselves. The mirrors they start looking in are more peer oriented when they're teenagers, but that doesn't mean that they don't need a connection with their parents. They're expanding their mirrors is what they're doing. So if you haven't established positive, healthy connection patterns with your kids, this is harder. It's not impossible, because you can establish them at any time. It's
Yeah.
harder to do and if you start in high school than it is if you start earlier.
Sam, I think the other thing that can come up with like parties and hanging out with friend groups and stuff is, are you the house that's hosting? Are you not hosting? Are you the cool parent? Are you the strict parent? I
Mhm.
think all this kind of also comes up. Like, what happens when your teen says, I want to have a group of people over, and knowing that those kids might be sneaking alcohol into your own home, or they might be asking for stuff,
Yeah.
like that puts you in a situation too as a
You have to decide that. Well, my husband and I decided that, of course, we are not the cool parents. Like,
parent.
I was the don't do drugs lady at school. It certainly wasn't happening in my basement. So when kids came over my house, we quite literally took a chain and put it around the handles to the basement fridge and padlocked that fridge because
That was where the alcohol was.
that was the beer fridge. Yeah, and right, like that was, and so like you could go into a fine raid our pantry. Like your friends can come over.
Anything you want to eat.
Mhm. Yep, yep. But we literally locked the alcohol up. And my son would be like, "You don't have to do that," and I'd be like, "But we're going to," because bad ideas happen when supervision went like late at night, and when supervision is low. And consequently, by the end of high school, we weren't hosting a lot of gatherings. I'll just tell you that. Like this is what we did early in high school when there were, and then by the end of high school, if people were coming over to our house, kids knew that that was not happening at the Straub household. Or if it did happen, it was totally secretive and it wasn't serious. Like this was.
It wasn't enough that it was causing issues.
I didn't know about it. I'll tell you that. Like if it happened, if listeners are like, "Oh, Mrs. Straub doesn't know that we stood it," like that could have happened. But it was infrequent enough and at such a low level that, like, again, the padlock remained on the beer fridge through. So, but yeah, you have to decide. We decided we were not going to be the cool parents, and it's I advise not to host. Like there's if you're listening, it's because if you host, your kid never can use the like my parents would be so mad at me if they found this out. They can never throw you under the crazy parent bus.
And honestly, sometimes your kid really might need that out.
Yeah, right. So if you're like, well, this is kind of okay with us, or like whatever, then if your kid gets into a bind and they want to slither out of that with their reputation intact, they can't blame you. Because their friends are like, we know your parents are fine with this. Like we were doing
Not
this
when
in
you're
your
the
back
don't do
tent.
drugs lady at their high school. They know.
They knew that I was not fine with it. Right. But they also, must have known on some level that I wasn't naive about it either, because I had kids who were attending these kinds of parties, right? Like I didn't endorse, but I wasn't naive, and that's where the power of "and" comes in.
Mm-hmm. And you love this. You love
I
this.
love it. I love
love this.
And just eliminate the word "but" from your parenting vocabulary, and just substitute "and" for all of those places where you would usually use "but." I love your friends, and I'm not cool with you drinking with them. I want you to socialize with your friends, and there's too much risk at that one. Like just they can compete, and it's okay for them to appear to be messy and competing.
But you're also sending a clear message, and
Yes.
teens need very concrete, clear messages sent.
Yes. Yeah. And explain the messages with values or skills.
It can't just be because I said so.
Not because I said so, right? It's because in our household we believe in honesty, or believe like your body matters, or this puts you at higher risk for X and your safety matters, and we're not in like I don't want you to be at higher risk for X. Whatever you want to.
Yeah.
Safety, values, skills. You use those to support whatever stance you take on this. That said, like if parents do have anxiety. We began by talking about that, but
Yes.
sometimes we're in the habit of overriding our anxiety, because like if you're like, I run anxious, I get anxious about everything, so I have to just like learn to white knuckle it. it can help with some data gathering, like, or it can help you figure out whether to pay attention to or override your anxiety if you do some data gathering. And you can do that better if you have an open line of communication with your teen, right? And if you can't trust your teen to give you that line of communication, it's fair game to get it yourself.
Yep. And then I also think, look, kids are going to screw up. Like, your kid's going to do something at a party, or they're going to break that value. They're going to break that trust. They're going to lie about where they were or what they did. And I think that's where, like, safety becomes a priority. Like, make sure you get your kid home safe. Like, and try your best not to have that conversation at 1 o'clock in the morning when you've gotten your kid back home. Like, if your kid is under the influence, it's definitely not the time to have the conversation. Like,
Yeah.
and
No
it's
one
not the
says
right
that.
place for you because your own emotions are too dysregulated probably in that moment. Like, everybody needs to go to sleep, and then the following morning, day or whatnot, when everybody is sober and has kind of had a chance to kind of process, then we need to come back to the table and have this conversation.
But you do, I'm so glad you said that. Yes, you need to give some space. And I completely agree. There's some parents who give too much space. Like, something happened 2 weeks ago and they're like, we know we need to circle back. I'm like, no, there's a window on this.
No, I think that's a pretty short window of like the following day.
Yeah.
Because also, too, just the way adolescent brains work,
Yeah.
like, if you wait 2 weeks, they're like, it's done, it's over. Like, the consequence is not significant to them anymore.
Right. Or they're like, ooh, I got away with it. And who knows what they've been pulling off in those 2 weeks.
Yeah, it might be worse.
Yes. So, yeah, you have to address it. And when you do address it, stay regulated and use values or skills as a reason for enforcing whatever consequences you do. So, like, and a consequence is not a punishment. It is a room for teaching, like, or an opportunity for teaching. And you think, what did my kid fail to demonstrate that they know last night? Or what, like, they didn't, they were irresponsible, or they were dishonest, or they, didn't communicate well enough, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So your consequence should be designed to teach them how to do that thing better, or how to internalize that value better. That's how to make the consequences. And sometimes a consequence can be, what you've now earned is an uncomfortable sit down for 10 minutes before you go out anywhere because we don't trust you. Like, or like, and before that, you're housebound for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, that would be a reasonable
You're not driving the car because you
went elsewhere.
weren't responsible and told me you were going someplace that you didn't actually go.
Yes. So now you are allowed to go places, but I'm the one who gets you there and back.
Yeah.
That sucks for both of us. But right? Yeah. So there may need to be consequences around parties, but to the extent you can say yes, and it's within your comfort zone to do so, I recommend saying yes. Not to every party. Like, I recommend, and so the yes might be, yes, you can go, and I'll be picking you up at 10 p.m. if that's what you're thinking.
This is good. This is good practicing for adulting and for, when your child is potentially off at school or out on their own, that when they're faced to make these decisions without, a parent present or caregiver present, like, those values and responsibilities have been built up and they have that knowledge base already.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, under whatever parameters you need.
Yes, and
yes, and
my favorite word.
Yes, and not yes, but yes, and right.
Sam, any closing thoughts as we kind of wrap up and head into 2026, into the new year? And
yeah, good. So this is on the eve of New Year, where this is like New Year's Eve, I think, when this is right? Like, it's a few days before New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve parties come with them, and certain times of the year come with them, these like ritualistic expectations too. So if you are negotiating party attendance around something like this, like you might need to have a conversation. Like, I know it's fun to kiss someone at midnight, but you don't have to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, like that's a conversation that probably high schoolers need to have around like consent, and
Yeah.
not consent for like sex, but like consent for a kiss, even. You know, that like you don't just steal a kiss at midnight on like. So if you've got events coming up, if your kid's going to a party that you know there are going to be certain additional factors, like for example, New Year's Eve, the party's not ending before midnight.
No. The reality is, if you want to pick your kid up at 10 p.m., they're probably not going to want to go at all.
That's not right. So there are like extra circumstances under some party events, and so just be mindful of those. Don't be blind to them. Consider them.
And I mean, I think other examples are things like homecoming and prom come to mind.
Yes. Yeah. I just did like a meetup in the Teen Savvy Parent Hub on this very topic at the request of one of the members in there. So you said, like, is this something that comes up often? Yeah. Yeah. Really often. Like really often.
Yeah.
And how to navigate it is hard. But I hope that our listeners have found this conversation helpful. I feel like we did kind of like snake all over the place, but I feel like we've given some concrete, I don't know, tools or frameworks to think about as people are guiding their kids through this.
Yeah. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we wish everyone a very happy new year.
Yes.
And a happy and healthy 2026 to start very soon.
And speaking of that, if you've got topics for us, we're kicking off the new year. If you've got topics, you're like, I need parenting shrink wrap to teach me this. Send us an email. Let us know. parentingshrinkwrapped@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We're cultivating guests right now for the year, and we'd love to put a topic on the books that would be relevant for you.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us for this episode, our last episode of 2025. And we love you. We love your kids. Thank you for raising the next generation of world changers.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride called parenthood here at Parenting Shrink Wrapped. We hope today's episode gave you some useful tools and maybe even a few laughs to help you navigate the twists and turns of raising teens and kids.
Remember, parenting is a journey, not a destination. And no matter where you are on the road, we're here to help you stay on course. Whether it's monumental meltdowns, teenage turmoil, or just the everyday chaos, you don't have to travel this path alone.
So until next time, keep your seatbelt fastened, your sense of humor intact, and your eyes on the road. We'll be back soon with more compassionate conversations and practical strategies to support you and your family.
Don't forget to subscribe to Parenting Shrink Wrapped wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you've enjoyed today's show, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review and share it with a friend.
If you have suggestions for topics you'd like to see us cover in the future, feel free to send us an email at parentingshrinkwrapped@gmail.com.
Until we meet again, take care and enjoy the ride.